We have breaking news. There is another Graham Platner political bombshell. And if you thought the tattoos and explicit messages were shocking, get ready for this one. Political reporting: a woman who dated the U.S. Senate candidate from Maine claims Platner forced her to have sex with him nearly 5 years ago. Platner's campaign is vehemently denying the claims. We're going to have more on this in a bit. And President Trump has just been threatened again. The threat's coming from a mob in Iran. Today, Iranians held up signs that read, "Kill Trump." Others held up pictures of Trump with a bullseye across his face and with the words, "There will be blood." There were also similar pictures and threats of War Secretary Pete Hegseth and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. This was at the funeral for killed Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei. Millions of Iranians attended. So amid this funeral, this mob, and these threats, what is the status of peace talks with Iran?
We're either going to make a deal or we're going to finish the job, okay? And it won't be tough to finish the job. I'd rather make a deal because I don't want to affect 91 million people.
Plus, the power of the Trump card.
All I did, I asked for a review because I didn't think it was a foul. And, you know, again, I'm good at this stuff. I didn't think it was a foul.
After America celebrating, after Trump gets involved, after an American soccer star gets a red card. So while America cheers, there is some international outrage. Former NFL sideline reporter and Republican candidate for U.S. Senate from Minnesota, Michele Tafoya, will join me shortly. Also had Charlie Kirk's accused assassin appears in court.
Spectators shall not engage in any distracting, disruptive, provocative, disrespectful, uncivil, or threatening behavior of any kind.
Charlie Kirk's widow, Erika Kirk, is in the courtroom. We're going to have more from the courtroom in Utah. I'm Greta Van Susteren. This is The Record. And back to that breaking news off the top of the show. A woman who dated Graham Platner, the Democratic nominee for U.S. Senate from Maine, tells Politico he forced her to have sex with him nearly 5 years ago. 41-year-old Jenny Raschicot says one night in 2021, Platner, who was deeply intoxicated, entered her home uninvited and forced himself on her despite repeatedly telling him to stop. She says, quote, "I remember him grabbing my pelvis and being really forceful of me," end quote. Platner's campaign has denied this, calling the allegations, quote, "troubling, serious, and false," end quote. Today, Platner also released a video.
I wanted to directly address the troubling, serious, and false allegations against me. Any accusation of non-consensual behavior is categorically false.
White House and Washington reporter for Politico, Daniel Lippman, joins me. And Daniel, this is one of these stories that is not anonymous. You have the sources, right? Or a source. Whether or not she's telling the truth is another issue, but it's a named source.
Yeah, and this is someone who had actually spoken to the New York Times previously about her, actions with Platner, but didn't go into any detail. She had only been in like a paragraph or two in the New York Times story, and there was another on-the-record person there, not about sexual assault, but about other behavior that was troubling. And so this is a story that is going to be very hard for Platner's campaign to deny, especially in a Democratic Party where one of the top principles is believe women.
Is there any corroboration? Because it's easy, a lot of these things happen and, things can be made up. People can lie or they could be truthful. But was there any corroboration? Did she tell anybody back at the time or recently? Is there any written trail of any? Not that she's compelled to have, but is there anything to help us sort through this?
So in the story, my colleagues have text messages where she had told a friend a couple years ago, hey, kind of stay away from him, basically, that this is someone who gets drunk, he has PTSD, and that, I've had a troubling experience with him. And so she doesn't go into every single detail, but that's one corroborating piece. The other thing is my colleagues talked to a person she dated right after Platner, She told him this story, and he corroborated that as well, although he was anonymous. But I remember, Greta, we often talk about anonymous sources, and so it's very hard for a campaign to be in a situation where they're going after a woman who is a real woman who is on the record. And so that's why it seems like he is taking some time to evaluate the future course of his campaign. He's canceled some events, and the story was kind of expected in the last couple hours after he had done that.
And of course, with corroboration, which is the big deal. I mean, if there's some, corroboration to what she says, and as you indicate, there appears to be some. I don't know the quality of it. What does this do to the race? Is the governor was on the ballot, and she withdrew from, she suspended her campaign, but she remained on the ballot. But then he beat her in the primary, I think, on June 9th or sometime in mid-June. And so, what's the Democratic Party going to do if does he want to stay in? Will he insist on staying in? Can they get rid of him? What can they do?
So there is a deadline coming up in just a few days, I think maybe in a week or so, where the deadline for him to basically drop out if he wants to, and then the Maine Democratic Party, in kind of an unprecedented way, would try to figure out. Maybe have some type of mini primary, or have their kind of state party committee decide who is a good person to replace him on the ballot. So after mid-July, it becomes too late, and then they start to print ballots and the like. And so there's a very narrow window where this story may kind of compel him to say enough is enough. I've had too many negative stories, that my poll numbers against Susan Collins do not make me a good candidate going forward.
All the years that I've been in this business and Susan Collins has been in the Senate, I've never interviewed her, but I've watched her from afar. And and I've always stated this, is that she's like the woman who never did anything wrong. She never copied off anybody's paper in high school. So what extremes? I mean, I spent my life trying to take a look at somebody's paper when I was a kid. So this is such a contrast.
Yeah, there's no stories about her like this, and so one story a candidate can survive, especially in this post kind of Trump scandal-free political and media environment, but it's just been one after the other for Platner. And so it's very hard for voters and moderates to dismiss these and say, oh, all of these women are making this up, or he did not sext with a half dozen women after he got married. And so that's what makes it harder for him to come back from these types of allegations.
Daniel Lippman of Politico, thank you very much.
Thank you, Greta.
CPAC Chairman Matt Schlapp joins me. Matt, let's go to another part of the country, from Maine to Michigan, and actually to Colorado as well, and the Democratic Party. Obviously, you're a Republican, so you're not going to say a whole lot of nice things about the Democrats, but they are going far left. Democratic Socialist candidates are winning in the Democratic Party, and now we've got Michigan, Abdul El-Sayed, who's probably going to win the nomination for Senate.
Now, look, there's a large Muslim and Arab population in Michigan, both Arab Christians and Arab Muslims. It shouldn't be surprising that somebody with that heritage can do well in that state. But go beyond the ethnicity and the religious questions and go to the policies. There's a real bent on the Democratic Party, I'd say even both parties, but definitely the Democratic Party, to abandon any association with Israel. There's even, you'll see ads run when I travel around the country of people accusing the other person of taking funds from AIPAC. AIPAC used to be a central core of getting elected as a Democrat. Now, if you accept a check from them, that could lose you a primary.
Well, the Democrats in this country, and I hate to generalize, but they have not been the most supportive of Israel, I don't think. Have they?
Well, I mean,
or have they?
Chuck Schumer.
Well, I'm not saying they're not Jewish. I'm just saying that they're not. No, I'm just saying
in years past they would have been, but I agree with you. I think they've completely abandoned this close association we have with Israel. And you get into these really kind of sketchy questions, which is you can disagree with Benjamin Netanyahu's policies, or you can say that he shouldn't pursue these military aims, but should there not be a Jewish state after everything the Jewish people went through on this globe, where people wouldn't accept them in the context of World War II, and so we created a Jewish state. Now this concept of a Jewish state. What did the mayor of New York City say the other day? He's okay with Israel. He just doesn't like having a Jewish state.
Well, what's the impact, though? President Trump, there have been stories in recent time. President Trump has had arguments with Prime Minister Netanyahu. And I think he thought that Prime Minister Netanyahu would be more obedient to the things that he wanted to do. And apparently Netanyahu is not. He's his own man. He's got his own country. But it does seem that even that, that hurts, I think, within the Republican Party.
Yeah, there's no question that this whole idea of how tightly America is bound to Israel and vice versa has become politically controversial, which is shocking for me because as a younger person, we would have seen the state of Israel as one of our closest allies and a great thing because in the Middle East context, it was always the problems with Iran and the problems with Iraq and the problem with, petrodollars and the war and strategies around the fact that fossil fuels, govern the whole of our economy. And now fast forward to today, and America is a net exporter of fossil fuels. I think people are cavalier about how important it is to have a friend in that neighborhood. And we don't teach history, Greta. There's not a person who understands history who can't understand why we created a Jewish state, because they were literally on ships floating in the ocean and the seas because people didn't want to accept these Jews that were migrants from the atrocities of World War II and from the Holocaust. And so this seemed like the right solution. And now they question either need to it. If you didn't have a Jewish state, where would you want the Jews to go?
I'm making a prediction if the midterms were held today or tomorrow, that the turnout would be very poor. I think a lot of Democrats are probably getting pretty, disenchanted with the Democratic Party because it's going so far left that takes out the moderate element.
That's a good point.
And I think in the Republican Party, with the poll numbers of the president, he's not on the ballot, but he is on the ballot, and people are unhappy with him within the Republican wing. I don't think anyone's going to show up to vote.
My only pushback to you, Greta, is that if there are moderate Democrats, it's time for them to consider a new option. Because if you actually look at the turnout in these states, Democratic turnout is not depressed. And I actually do think the Democratic Party is embracing socialism, communism. You can call it anti-Semitism, or you can just say anti-Israel sentiment. They're embracing all of these ideas, and I think they're incredibly controversial. And I think you're right. They turn off a lot of people. It's why Trump is not just about being a Republican and not just about being a conservative. It's a broader coalition. And that's why, for me, this coalition has got to stay together even after Donald Trump is out of the White House.
Matt Schlapp, thank you. Nice to see you, sir. Coming up, Charlie Kirk's alleged killer in court, and there are cameras. We're going to take you inside the courtroom so you can see for yourself. Plus, more drama for the royal family. Prince Harry gets a very awkward homecoming. That when the record continues.
You're a proud American in the land of the free. But how do you feel about things right now? Are you thriving or just surviving? What's lifting you up? What's dragging you down? What issues matter to you most? Your voice and your vote is your power. Use that power and share your story with us. The voice of the voter. Newsmax is listening. Visit newsmax.com/voice of the voter.
Now, tirzepatide for weight management is available in a dissolvable tablet. It's not the injection and doesn't offer the same strength or clinical evidence as the injectable form, and results will differ from the injection. But for patients who don't want shots, this tablet option is worth exploring, understanding results will differ from the injection. Tirzepatide tablets are a prescription that starts with a telehealth evaluation by a licensed physician who reviews your health history. And if it's right for you, they prescribe it. This might be worth a conversation.
Ooh, that new Cologuard Plus test. 10 out of 10.
Now I detect 95% of colon cancers, similar to colonoscopy.
Somebody's been working on himself. Girl, those blue arms say I got you. The square jaw says trust me.
And the free return label says I'm going places.
The Cologuard Plus test. Non-invasive, no prep, and better than ever. For people 45 plus at average risk, it's the box that checks all the boxes for screening. False positive and negative results may occur, not for those at high risk. Ask your provider or request Cologuard Plus online.
Some people think just because you have a disability, they put limits on you, but you have to prove them wrong.
You are not what society thinks of you. You are so much more than that. Donate $15 a month to Special Olympics to get someone with an intellectual disability onto the playing field and give them the chance to show the world what they can do.
I did it! Yeah!
Go online, call this number, or scan right now.
Today, Charlie Kirk's alleged assassin, Tyler Robinson, appeared in court in Utah for a 5-day preliminary hearing. Prosecutors seek to convince a judge that there is probable cause to believe that a crime was committed and that Robinson committed it. Robinson is charged with aggravated murder. The judge in the case began the hearing by recognizing the presence of Kirk's widow, Erika Kirk, in the courtroom. The judge also directed spectators to treat the hearing with respect. Here's some of what the judge said.
The court recognizes that this hearing may invoke a motion from everyone, and that the court understands the human nature of that, but also it's important that this courtroom is orderly.
President Trump's son, Donald Trump Jr., was also in the courtroom. Criminal defense attorney and former deputy district attorney in Salt Lake County, Utah, Nathan Evershed joins me. Nice to talk to you, sir. And tell me, every jurisdiction seems to be different, but a preliminary hearing on this case, 5 days? I mean, I would have thought it would take 1 hour.
Yeah, the preliminary hearing, it's not a jury trial. There's not going to be a lot of witnesses. There's 4. They are law enforcement officers. Apparently, there's going to be about four witnesses and about 50 exhibits. And then what's going to happen as well is that they're going to go through all of this and then be making their arguments. I do not think it's going to go 5 days. It'll probably go at least a couple days, though.
And of course, we're looking at a live shot inside that courtroom. Do you know this judge at all?
Very well. As a matter of fact, when I was a prosecutor, he was a prosecutor in the same office. So he has a lot of murder cases under his belt, mostly as a prosecutor. Very fair, and he's keeping this thing going.
Well, is the reason, I mean, like, I must admit that in preliminary hearings, I always tried to drag them out longer than an hour, because what it did was that the prosecution has to put all its witnesses on to prove a crime was committed and it was likely committed by my client, but it locked them into the testimony, so I learned about the prosecution case. So I suspected that that was a little bit what the defense was doing here, is ask as many questions as you can of the defense, of the cops, everybody, so you get them locked into their testimony, so you know what they're going to say at trial.
That's exactly what's been happening with the defense. They're going into a lot of different angles here. One is the lack of a debrief, for example, by the Utah Valley University Police Department. They're trying to explore different angles, different things. And so that's what they have to do. They frankly don't have a lot to work with in their case. And so they're just trying to find different angles that they can work with.
Do you know, I mean, I don't want to jump ahead and even say that he's guilty. I mean, I haven't heard any of the evidence, but I imagine at some point there's going to be some plea discussion. I mean, or I would, anticipate maybe even some so far, or some diminished capacity defense as to why he did it. Have you heard anything about that at all?
Not necessarily with diminished capacity or insanity or whatnot. I think that the defense's best argument, and maybe only argument, is just that the aggravator, which is a single element here, which is the only way that they can get to a death penalty phase, is not as strong as the prosecution might think. When it comes to murder, it's a very strong case. But when it comes to the aggravated portion, and that is that he knowingly created a grave risk of death for other people other than himself and Charlie Kirk, that's really all they have to work with. And I'm sure that they're going to be leveraging that and seeing if there is some kind of way to get away from the death penalty. But we'll see what happens.
Well, Erika Kirk certainly has a right to be present in the courtroom, without any doubt. Anybody who wants to go to the courthouse can be there. But I remember trying cases, and when you had the widow or the widower in the courtroom as a defense lawyer, it's like you could almost had eyes in the back of your head, because you knew how painful it was. Things you were asking of the witnesses on the witness stand that you knew were very painful for the family members in the courtroom.
100% right. It is so smart to have for the prosecution to have her there. It's very wise for her to be there. It just gives a human face to the tragedy that's behind all of this. And it just helps the judge to see there right in front of him is someone that is grieving, someone that wants this process to move forward, someone that wants justice to occur. And she's there, present, and it just puts a human face on this, and that's really important.
Well, she said at the memorial for Charlie Kirk that she forgave this man that she believes killed her husband. We'll see what happens to the court. And I'll tell you, She's a better woman than I am. I mean, good for her. She's got a strong faith and forgives him, but we'll see what happens at the trial. Anyway, Nathan Evershed, thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
Mixed messages surrounding Prince Harry's UK visit. Buckingham Palace says Harry will not be staying at the royal residence, but this is where the confusion comes in. Earlier today, Prince Harry's team announced that Prince Harry would be staying at the palace. So why is the royal palace saying something different? Well, Buckingham Palace says it needs time to accommodate guests and that Harry never formally responded to King Charles' offer to stay at Buckingham Palace by the deadline that he was given. The palace also says that on Saturday, the offer for Harry's immediate family to stay in the palace was turned down. But then it was later requested just for Prince Harry and not his wife and 2 children. At that point, the palace says it was too late for even Harry to stay there without his family. Meghan Markle and their 2 children were set to visit the UK with Prince Harry, but due to differences in security measures, Meghan decided not to travel with Prince Harry and the children to the UK. But then there is this. A spokesperson for Harry has a different story, saying it is, quote, unclear why, having formally accepted the accommodation offer, it has now been withdrawn at the last moment, end quote. So, okay, are you confused by all this? Well, basically, this appears to be a family drama. You may be familiar with your own family dramas, just not involving a palace. Coming up, he's back. He's ready to investigate President Trump again. Who are we talking about? Find out when the record continues.
Newsmax.
Shoots it straight.
No talking down to me.
Don't tell me how to think.
Don't tell me how to think.
Don't tell me how to think.
I trust Newsmax.
Newsmax.
They don't tell me how to think. They let me decide.
Real news for real people.
You're careful about what you bring home when shopping, especially when it comes to feeding your family. Shouldn't your investments work the same way? At Timothy Plan, we offer a wide selection of mutual funds and ETFs that can help you allocate assets without compromising your values. From technology to healthcare, energy to real estate, our funds are not only diverse but uncompromising to your values. Timothy Plan funds are filtered to avoid companies involved in abortion, pornography, human trafficking, and other harmful agendas. What you invest in should reflect what you stand for. Are your investments bearing good fruit? What's in your portfolio? Contact your financial advisor today to find out, or contact Timothy Plan directly at 1-800-TIM-PLAN to discover more. Before investing, carefully consider the fund's investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses of the investment company. This and other important information can be found in the fund's prospectus. To obtain a copy, visit timothyplan.com or call 800-846-7526. Read each prospectus carefully before investing. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal.
It's 2 a.m., your fever spiked, and you're miserable. Here's your options.
Urgent care, closed. ER, slammed, and you'll spend hundreds of thousands in both. Telehealth, yeah, but the pharmacies are closed.
That's the reason why we keep emergency medical kits at home.
It has doctor-prescribed medication like generic Z-Pak, amoxicillin, other antibiotics and antivirals. You can treat flu, pneumonia, strep, sinus infections, UTIs, and more.
Because if you're sick in at night, traveling or stranded, you don't want options.
You want what is inside this kit. No waiting, no pharmacy, and no copays.
Just schedule a quick telehealth call.
And that's how you feel better faster and avoid serious complications.
Every family should have this kit, and here's how to order yours.
Order online in minutes and use the promo code to save $45. Your doctor-prescribed kit ships fast to your door, packed with medications to treat over 30 conditions. So when something hits, you're ready. And a wellness company telehealth doctor is always there if you need guidance.
We can't find a ranch style with a view.
And a mom-in-law suite.
More realtor agents recommend Realtor.com. With their expert new search tool, just search it like you'd say it.
Room for mom.
And Reba. Make it real with Realtor.com.
When Conor McGregor fights, you're witnessing something once in a lifetime.
Surprise, surprise, the king is back.
All my life I want money and power.
Oh! Conor McGregor transcended the sport. Max Holloway. That's a real warrior. I'm right here. You're in for a treat.
McGregor versus Holloway, Saturday, July 11th. Free with your subscription, only on Paramount Plus.
There's a power within each of us. When awakened, it can boost performance, enhance learning, even help you work smarter. And you can unlock it with one simple thing: better sleep. Sattva provides that with our luxury mattresses, handcrafted with premium materials in our American factories. We even deliver to any room in your home for free. Sattva, you deserve the comfort of a great night's sleep.
This is the story. It's not going away, and it's not Jeffrey Epstein, by the way. It is the international tiff between President Trump and another world leader, and not just any world leader. As you will remember, how can you forget? Last month, Italy's Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni, accused President Trump of making up a story about her. Trump told an Italian TV station that Prime Minister Meloni begged him to take a photo with her. This was at the G7 summit in France that both Trump and Meloni attended. And so this week, the two will meet again at the NATO summit in Turkey. How is Trump preparing? Well, he posted this picture on Truth Social. Its caption is, quote, "Restraining order needed." Italian news sites were quick to respond. We translated the headlines from Italian to English. One headline reads, quote, "Trump crosses the line with Meloni." Another says, quote, "Trump attacks Meloni. He treats her like someone who betrayed a shared secret," end quote. A third one reads, quote, "New attack from Trump. Meloni needs a restraining order. Palazzo Chigi makes no comment," end quote. Palazzo Chigi is the official residence of the Prime Minister. It's kind of like the White House of Italy. And look who's talking. Former Special Counsel Jack Smith is back, and he's talking. And he is ready to retry his criminal cases, apparently, against President Trump. You will recall Smith brought 2 indictments against Trump. Smith indicted Trump on alleged efforts to overturn the 2020 election. And he also indicted Trump for his handling of classified documents at Mar-a-Lago. Both cases were dismissed, but for different reasons. But now Jack Smith says he's ready to revive them.
I was also reminded that after the Supreme Court grants Donald Trump immunity, you file a superseding indictment. You're still ready to bring the case to trial, right?
Yeah, correct.
Explain how you had to adjust and what that adjustment was.
Sure, and we set this forth in our report. We did what good prosecutors do and what you're supposed to do. We received a decision from the court. It wasn't the decision we wanted. We didn't agree with the reasoning of it. But in a society where you believe in the rule of law, you follow the court's decisions. And so we analyzed the decision, and we looked at what sort of evidence we could no longer use and what sort of evidence we could use.
Professor Emeritus at Harvard Law School, Alan Dershowitz, joins me. Professor Dershowitz, Jack Smith has resurfaced a year and a half into this administration, and he's talking about retrying the cases. Your thought?
Well, he's the cover picture on my book, Get Trump. He is the perfect example of somebody who didn't look at the evidence and decided on the basis of evidence to go after somebody, but decided to go after somebody, Donald Trump, just the way the DA of New York did and the Attorney General of New York. And then they searched for evidence. And then even though they got a negative Supreme Court decision, they're going to keep searching for evidence because they're going to get Trump no matter what. Just get Trump. It's Trump derangement syndrome on steroids, because it's one thing for citizens to have Trump derangement syndrome. It's quite another for a prosecutor. You know, Justice Jackson, the great Attorney General of the United States, said the worst sin a prosecutor can do is to target people and then look for the evidence to prosecute, because there's always enough to go after any target, the way, Stalin went after his enemies and the way Trump's enemies are going after him. So I hope he'll be, and I hope that we'll go back to a situation where the criminal justice system is based on evidence, not based on who you have in your target.
Well, I misspoke and said retry. Trump was never tried on this. The prosecution's got aborted for different reasons in the Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court. But this is the thing that's always gotten me, is that when Merrick Garland, the former Attorney General, chose Jack Smith, he said that this was like the best person. I'm paraphrasing, obviously. This is the perfect guy. This is the very guy who ruined the career of the governor of Virginia. And when that conviction, when he went after that, misreading the law, when he went after that governor and got a jury to convict him, he went up to the Supreme Court, and the governor won that case 9-0. But he ruined his career. He absolutely devastated. So why would you pick this guy to go after a former president?
To ruin his career, obviously, to get a repetition. We're seeing it now all over the place. We're seeing our criminal justice system not being respected by either side, because both sides are targeting their political enemies. And that's not the way the criminal justice system can survive. Look, I don't like special prosecutors, because special prosecutors are told, here's the target, now get the evidence. The whole concept of a special prosecutor going after a person rather than going after a situation like the Whitewater investigation or things of that kind. Going after a person violates the Justice Jackson rule. So I'm against it. Justice Scalia was against it. Many other people who are highly respected are against special prosecutors, and I think we've seen them abused to a fairly well. By the way, going back to a point you made earlier, I was introduced by President Trump to the Prime Minister of Italy in Mar-a-Lago when I was down there during the interregnum between his two terms. He was lovey-dovey with her. He was telling me what a great prime minister she was. And I had a chance to talk to her, and she invited me, to come to our office if I go to Italy. Everything was just hunky-dory. And then, of course, you get this, what looks like a high school debate about whether or not, he really wanted me to take a picture or didn't want me to take a picture. Look, Italy is a very strong ally of the United States, and we have to maintain our alliances, whether it's with Italy or Israel or any other country.
I think, it does seem rather seventh grade-ish, this back and forth. I agree, and which is why I like it. I mean, I like stories where there's no death and, no one goes to prison, and those are great ones. But President Trump was annoyed with her because she as an ally, she wouldn't let planes refuel when we started our military action against Iran. So I think that's what annoyed him, and now it's gotten into the seventh grade.
No, he's absolutely right about that. But we have to maintain our alliances. And, this was July 4th, and I have a new book out about founding fathers and one Jewish mother, about the founding fathers of America and the founding parents, including Golda Meir, Jewish mother of Israel. And so it's a good July 4th book. It's a coffee table book because it has all of my documents, the original documents. President Trump proudly has the Declaration of Independence in his office. He showed it to me. I have the same copy of the Declaration of Independence in my home, printed about 40 or 50 years after the Declaration. These are great documents. These are great times. So happy birthday, America. What a great time. 250 years and still going.
I would say the last word, but I'm going to send you a copy of a tweet from the British Embassy yesterday, which was by far the best 4th of July or 2 days ago. It's the best. The British Embassy referring to us as an X, but it's very cute. Anyway, Professor Alan Dershowitz, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Happy to be an X to Great Britain.
Coming up, a huge funeral in Iran turns into death threats to President Trump. That one, the record continues.
Join Carl Higbie and his fellow veterans and hear what they have to say about call to service, the rise in socialism, and protecting our Second Amendment. Voices of Valor. Tonight at 6 p.m., only on Newsmax.
250 years ago, 13 was a very lucky number. Led by George Washington, the 13 colonies joined together to declare their independence. Now, on the 250th birthday of our nation, Washington is making headlines once again with the 2026 13-sided George Washington 24-karat gold dollar. Exclusively available from First Colonial Mint when you call 1-800-885-1776. Issued by Ascension Island, this dollar is the world's first 13-sided gold coin. It features Washington's portrait, 13 stars, and an eagle design from a gold coin Washington himself carried in his pocket. First Colonial Mint has released these gold coins for the special introductory price of only $69. This price is only available for a limited time, after which any coin still available will be priced at $119. So act now. Don't miss out. Call 1-800-885-1776 now.
The summer of savings continues at Lumber Liquidators. Hurry in for great deals on over 250 varieties of durable flooring. Save over 20, 30, 40, 50% on top-selling favorites for every room. Find luxury plank vinyl for as low as 69 cents a square foot. Pre-finished engineered hardwood from $179 a square foot. And over 15 styles of waterproof click vinyl starting at just $199 a square foot. Find your next floor for less during the summer of savings. Start shopping nationwide or online at lumberliquidators.com.
Get in, loser. We're going shopping.
I was lying on the grass a Sunday morning of last.
Yummy.
Indulging in myself to be
As if.
fantastic. That's what I've been saying. I can't hardly walk.
Hello, everyone. It's President Donald J. Trump, and it's Trump time. Check out this red beauty. It's one of my new watches. Wear it proudly on your wrist, and everyone will know exactly what it's for, who it represents. It's really going to be something special. It's for your favorite president. Get your watch today at gettrumpwatches.com. These make a great gift. It's Trump time.
Kibble. It's been the standard for decades, and it's failing our dogs. That's why we created Badlands Ranch Superfood Complete. It's gently air-dried, locking in the nutrients and the flavor dogs go wild for. Visit your local pet food retailer today.
Your mouthwash routine just got a whole lot smarter. Use Smart Mouth Activated Morning Mouthwash with B12 for all-day bad breath prevention, guaranteed. If your mouthwash isn't activated, it's not Smart Mouth. Kickstart your morning. Get Smart Mouth Activated Mouthwash with B12.
Hey, I'm Dr. Drupinski. I've been looking at the aging process for a long time. Fatty 15 actually slows it down. Fatty 15 comes out of Navy dolphin research. Without the C15, our cells become fragile and age and oxidize. This pushes that back. That's why I take Fatty 15.
Mother Nature is mean, so mean. First there was a heat wave, then came the rain, and now this in New Jersey. All that rain caused a roof to collapse. It happened at BJ's Wholesale Club in Ocean Township. The roof caved in and water flooded the store. People say 27 people were inside the store when it happened. 2 people were partially trapped, but police say these 2 were able to free themselves. Thankfully, no injuries were reported. And look at this, a sea of people estimated to be in the millions. They are attending the funeral for Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, the Supreme Leader who was killed in the first hours of the war that began back on February 28th. Middle East correspondent Zach Anders joins me from Tel Aviv, where it is 11:37 p.m. Zach?
Greta, the coffins that Tehran says holds the body of Ayatollah Khamenei and his family were carried through the streets of Tehran today on the back of a semi-truck. It's one of the largest funeral processions this region has seen in recent memory. The crowd dressed in all black on a 100-degree day, waving red flags. Now, for Shia Muslims, the red flag you see waving throughout the crowd represents spilled blood, and when they raise it, it calls for revenge. Elements of the crowd caught on video burning American, UK, Israeli flags, and at times there were chants of death to America, death to Israel, with signs reading in English, "Kill Trump," and "There will be blood," with crosshairs through a portrait of the president.
Our leader has been martyred. Our imam has been martyred. Our father has been martyred. America has killed our father. We must kill his father. We must take revenge for our father. They have killed the father of Iran. God is the greatest. Death to America.
Incredibly charged crowd there on the ground. Iran's health ministry says 15 million people are expected across the country at multiple public ceremonies. And while Iran mourns, diplomacy has been paused. Qatari and Pakistani mediators say that positive progress had been made before the Iranian delegation left and returned to their country for these ceremonies. Indirect talks are reportedly set to resume after Iran's nationwide mourning period ends. Still notably absent, Khamenei's son Mujtaba, the new supreme leader, once again raising speculation that his injuries sustained in the attack that took out his father are more severe than the regime admits. It's still possible, if he is alive and able, that he could make an appearance perhaps on the last day of these events when his father is to be buried in his hometown on Thursday. Live in Tel Aviv, Zach Anders, Newsmax.
Zach, before you go, I mean, in January, people were protesting, asking us for help. They're getting protesters shot. I guess those aren't the people that are out there today who are now asking to kill, our leaders and Prime Minister Netanyahu. I mean, what a difference of protesting.
This is a difficult part about when we're looking at a country of 90 million people, and when we were covering this back in January, really making a point that this is a big country with a lot of people. So you can certainly get a couple million that are hardliners within the regime out into the streets like this. I think also an element of this is it's going to be, especially within families that are closer to the regime or men that perhaps work in lower level but still government jobs, it's going to be a big question for them and their families. were you at this funeral ceremony today? And they're going to need to be able to answer to their bosses and to their friends and relatives that they were there mourning the supreme leader on a day like today, that they weren't noticeably absent within their circles. That's another element to this, too.
Zach Anders, thank you. And while eyes have been on Iran and its appetite for nuclear material, North Korea has been busy. Now it is touting the comeback of a warship that embarrassingly failed last year at its initial launch. On Friday, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un supervised a weapons test on the 5,000-ton destroyer. Kim Jong-un said the test confirmed the warship's capabilities. He's ordered the ship to be commissioned and sea trials completed. The ship will then be placed into active service in the North Korean Navy. Meanwhile, today, China was also busy. China test-fired from a nuclear-powered submarine a long-range ballistic missile. The test firing is raising alarms in the region as China grows its naval and nuclear capabilities. China says the tests were merely part of its annual military training and was not targeted towards any nation in particular. Coming up, a red card reversal thanks to President Trump. Many, if not most, Americans are happy. Everyone else around the world, not so much. That when the record continues.
Now, tirzepatide for weight management is available in a dissolvable tablet. It's not the injection and doesn't offer the same strength or clinical evidence as the injectable form, and results will differ from the injection. But for patients who don't want shots, this tablet option is worth exploring. Understanding results will differ from the injection. Tirzepatide tablets are a prescription that starts with a telehealth evaluation by a licensed physician who reviews your health history. And if it's right for you, they prescribe it. This might be worth a conversation.
What if I told you you can get a brand new metal roof from Erie Home for 50% off the installation? Now you can. Our metal roofs are proven to withstand 120 miles per hour wind and 2-inch hail, all backed by a 50-year warranty. Call now for your free estimate.
The Shady Rays Independence Day sale is live now with up to 50% off on all sunglasses. That's premium polarized sunglasses made to keep up with real life. Durable, comfortable, and backed by lost and broken protection if life happens. Yes, really, we replaced lost and broken sunglasses, so the next time your day brings an unexpected surprise, we've got you covered. Get the quality your eyes deserve and head to ShadyRays.com to get your new favorite pair today.
Hello, this is Franklin Graham. Samaritan's Purse is responding to the deadly earthquakes that struck Venezuela on the 24th of June. 2 back-to-back earthquakes. Hundreds and thousands of people have been injured. Thousands of people are missing. The people are hurting. Samaritan's Purse has taken a field hospital. We've got doctors and nurses, and we're responding right now to the people that have lost so much. We've taken water purification. We've taken solar lights, a lot of things. We need your prayers and we need your help. God bless you.
My dad has never been in better shape. He had a stroke and passed away. He had a life insurance policy. Ethos.com. In 10 minutes, you can be covered with life insurance.
Check your price today at ethos.com.
Millions of Americans rely on a statin to reduce cholesterol, but statins can deplete CoQ10 levels. I recommend Cunol CoQ10 with 3 times better absorption and the #1 cardiologist recommended form. It helps replenish what statins deplete. Cunol, the brand I trust.
For pain in multiple spots like here, here, or here, Salonpas patches stick firmly and remove comfortably once your pain is gone. Salonpas. It's good medicine.
It was supposed to be the perfect gateway. Instead, it became an open door for cyber criminals. But that threat stops right here. Built by Americans for America. Systematic defends our homes, our businesses, and our government. Don't let them compromise your identity. Get our all-in-one solution today. Visit PCmatic.com.
Great news for Team USA and its fans across America. Team USA will now be playing with their top scorer tonight. This after FIFA reversed a red card against Flo Balogun. Last week, the red card was issued during the United States game against Bosnia-Herzegovina. This led to Balogun being removed from the game and 1-game suspension, which would have been tonight. But yesterday, FIFA reversed its decision. So what prompted that reversal? You can thank President Trump.
I asked for a review because I didn't think it was a foul. There was 2 guys running full speed that happened to crash into each other. You can't take your foot and properly place it on somebody else's foot. when you're going, no, these were two great athletes that got tangled up. He didn't do anything wrong, and he's our best player or one of our best players, a very vital player. And he gave him a red card. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't think it meant much. Then I started hearing that means he can't play in the next game, at least in the next game. If it happened to another player, it would have been unfair.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio also chimed in.
I think it was the right decision to reverse it. And if you're Belgium, why would you want to play a game and win a match, and then you win this match, and then everyone will argue you didn't really win it because their best player, leading scorer, was not on the pitch during the match. You want the other side to be at its best so that your victory is not tainted in that way.
Of course, Belgium is not happy with the reversal. Belgium even tried to appeal the decision to let Team USA's lead scorer play tonight. However, earlier today, FIFA rejected Belgium's appeal. Republican U.S. Senate candidate from the state of Minnesota and former NFL sideline reporter Michele Tafoya joins me. Nice to see you. Nice to have you back.
Good to see you.
Okay, a foul in soccer, can it be accidental or does it have to be intentional?
Well, to get a red card, it needs to be intentional. And that was the rub with this whole thing. And the uproar was immediate. People saying, what a bogus red card. You know, and what it left was Team USA having to go the final 30 minutes of that second half, one man down. So basically 10 versus 11. And they won anyway. They did it anyway. They held their own. So now you hear that Balogun's going to be able to play and everyone's ecstatic until they hear that Trump made a phone call. And that's when all the left-leaning media started to say, oh, stain on the tournament, when in fact the red card to begin with, Greta, 99% of observers thought it was absolutely a terrible call.
Well, I'm just becoming a soccer fan because I didn't pay a lot of attention to soccer because I was like games that have bigger points, like basketball, you get more points, within a time. But so anyway, so I've created my own red card that I'm going to use, when I'm, having trouble with people on the set. I like this idea of the red card, but I don't like the idea that they don't have an instant replay so you can look at it and, because what I saw, it looked like an accident. How could you even plan something like that?
Not only they do have this VAR, this video review, which they did use, and they slowed it down. You and I both know, Greta, you and I have seen enough replay to understand that when you slow something down enough, you can find what you're looking for. And that was sort of the accusation.
I didn't realize that. Here. They slowed it down?
They did slow it down.
I didn't realize they slowed it down.
But even when you slow it down and you're watching, there was so much controversy over this call because people were like, there's just no way this was intentional. It didn't deserve a red card. And credit to Balogun. He admitted to being really angry about it. But what good leaders do is they put aside their feelings because he said, I knew I had millions of kids watching me. So I didn't want to show my discontent. Applaud to him. That's what leaders do. And also sometimes what leaders do is they make phone calls. And they say, you know what, could you review this? It looked terrible. Yeah, but because his name happens to be Donald Trump, that's what everyone I think is in an uproar over. You know what, people have said, if the U.S. went on and lost against Belgium because they were down one of their best players, America would have said, this is ridiculous. This now has a stain on it. We lost one of our best players to a bogus call. So I think the correct decision was made here, and I think a lot of people do.
Think how embarrassing it would have been to Belgium if they had won the game, if they didn't let them play, because it looked like they'd get an asterisk after it saying the only reason they won is because the U.S. had one arm tied behind its back because they didn't get the player. It's interesting though. I think this is really good for soccer, this dispute, because everybody's talking about it in the country. Everyone's going to be watching tonight's game. Everyone's going to pay attention. I've learned so much about soccer. the more interesting things happen, the more I get addicted to this game.
You know what? I've been watching every game. I'm so glad the U.S. is still in this thing because it's keeping us all watching every single game. And that England-Mexico game last night was tremendous. And yeah, I think that this whole World Cup, Greta, has been an unbelievable success. There's been just a lot of camaraderie between the teams, between the fans. It's been good for America. I've loved every minute of it.
And, I like is, America wasn't, considered to be the front runner in the beginning. Who was it? Wasn't it Spain and Argentina, I think, were supposed to be the ones that we feared the most. So
here we go.
I think,
and England's still in it. And it's a fascinating, great tournament. And I think tonight's viewership is going to be massive.
All right, one quick question about your race. You told me healthcare was the big topic last time you were here. Is that still what they're talking about? Or are they talking about this game in Minnesota?
Well, they're talking about this game here, too. And we're also talking about the Timberwolves potentially getting LeBron James added to the roster. Apparently, Minnesota is one of the teams he's considering. But really, it all comes back to fraud. I was marching in 4th of July parades all weekend, Greta, and I had people screaming, get rid of the fraud. Please help us get rid of the fraud. Hold these people accountable. So the fraud, and that includes Medicaid and healthcare fraud, is still very top of mind for everyone. And yes, and you know what? So is that word affordability. But boy, you look at this state, and our Democrat leaders in this state have not kept things affordable for Minnesotans. So I wouldn't trust them to do it in the future either. We can bring down costs. The Republicans can.
Well, I'm hoping, as I say to every candidate, Republican, Democrat, I'm hoping for the best for you to win, but it's obviously going to hurt my show if you do win, because I won't have you here to discuss sports. So, I'm sort of selfish about that.
We can still talk
but
sports,
anyway.
Greta. We can still talk sports.
Indeed we can. All right, Michele Tafoya, thank you very much for joining me.
Great to see you.
And a 7-hour time difference did not stop pubs across the pond from pulling an all-nighter. Pubs in the United Kingdom were allowed to stay open, you ready for this, until 5 a.m. Why? Well, the World Cup, because last night in the World Cup, England played Mexico in Mexico. The game started at 2 a.m. British Standard Time. Prior to the game, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer allowed pubs to serve alcohol until 5 a.m. Pubs normally close at 11 p.m. That means some fans probably stayed out at the pub until 5 a.m. and then went straight to work. Others took a nap.
I actually went to bed, woke up, and then went back to bed. So it was intense.
Fortunately for the loyal who stayed up all night, England won 3-2. Next up, England will play Norway on Saturday, and coming up, Ohio gets sauced during a heat wave. We have the proof. That when the record continues.
Another lost summer scrolling and swiping? Turns out the fix is right here. Create new lifetime memories from the comfort of your backyard. No passports, no reservations. Latham's premium handcrafted pools can be installed in weeks. Our pools won't stain or crack and never require costly resurfacing. And with our crystal finish, you can bring your favorite exotic watercolor and shimmer right to your own backyard. Visit LathamPool.com now. Latham is a proud sponsor of USA Artistic Swimming.
Where's the admission desk at your hospital? You may need it sooner than you think. It's the middle of the night and you, your spouse, or your child is sick, high fever, can't keep anything down, and getting worse. Now you're waiting in the ER, and everyone gets seen before you. And when I finally see you and order prescriptions, you still have to wait for your pharmacy to open and hope they have what I prescribed. This is the medical emergency kit. It's stocked with essential medications, including amoxicillin, generic Z-Pak, and ivermectin. Now you have the right medications when you need them. And it's why I and so many of my colleagues have medical emergency kits. It's like having an urgent care and pharmacy in your home. Just fill out a brief online medical intake and your kit, prescribed by a licensed provider, is shipped to your door. Here's how to order.
Order your kit now and save $45. Visit urgentcarekit.com/news. That's urgentcarekit.com/news.
Think you need a new roof? Think again and save thousands. We'll help you put off the high cost of a roof replacement for at least 5 years.
Or 10.
Or sometimes even 15.
We're America's most trusted roofer because we always try to save your roof rather than replace it.
We'll restore your roof for a fraction of the cost of a new one. But don't wait. If your roof loses too much protective coating, it's too late. Call now or scan the code and we'll give you an assessment of your roof for free.
While this banana may not save you from someone breaking into your home, Berna's banana helped one vet repel an intruder in his.
This huge guy, 6'5", 6'6", just barreled through my front door. I have my Berna and my Glock. I always go for the Berna first. I've seen enough death and destruction to last 2 lifetimes. Here is the perfect item I can have, feel totally safe, and know I'm not going to kill anybody.
At Berna, we don't sell bananas, we sell peace of mind.
There's no way a mouthwash can prevent bad breath for 12 hours.
You're right, Val. Mouthwash can't, but this is dentist-developed Smart Mouth Activated Mouthwash.
Activated?
Yeah, if your mouthwash isn't activated, it's not Smart Mouth. See, this plus this activate for 12 hours of bad breath prevention, guaranteed. Try it. You won't have bad breath in the morning. Good night, Val.
Get dentist-developed Smart Mouth today. It's the smarter mouthwash, available at these fine retailers.
Honey, Mortgage Bunny 6 says we should keep renting.
Mortgage Bunny 6?
Reba says more realtor agents recommend Realtor.com. They track every market so you know when to make your move.
He also says that Bigfoot... Got it.
Make it real with Realtor.com.
You thought you were booking a relaxing vacation, but hackers just booked a ticket into your private life. Your passport, your birth date, your identity exposed. PC-Matic, cybersecurity built by Americans for America.
There are a few things you can expect to see during a heat wave. Air conditioning blasting all day, kids playing in pools or sprinklers. Well, here is something unexpected. A hot sauce disaster in a heat wave. Last week, when the temperatures reached 90 plus in half of America, Ohio had this. A semi-truck started leaking Frank's hot sauce all over Interstate 71. The Columbus Dispatch says at first the driver did not realize it, so the truck left a trail of the spicy stuff. And here's something to think about. Hot sauce is not only spicy, it is acidic. So environmental crews had to be called in. They used hazmat materials to clean up the hot sauce so that it would not leak into drains. And don't forget, I have a new podcast called Greta Wire. You'll like it. It's different. You can subscribe now on your favorite podcast app. It's free. And they're great topics. I had Dr. Jennifer Ashton on weight loss drugs. I've had Brett Favre, Mike Tyson, Hilvin Finch, which is a favorite of mine. It's a man that I represented in the mid-'80s, and he was doing 108 years in prison. And I got him out, and it's a very unique story. It's a long story, but that's another great podcast. Mark Garrigus is the one I'm going to post tomorrow night. Mark Garrigus is a lawyer who you probably know. He represented the husband of Lacey Peterson, who was murdered out in Modesto, California. Mark says that his client, Scott Peterson, is innocent. And he insists on it. So we'll ask him about that. But Mark has also represented Michael Jackson. And you get a lot of sort of the inside story. And Mark and I we talk like lawyers. We're almost in a bar talking back and forth about cases that we've handled. So it's sort of fun. It's a different type. You'll like it, though. But it's a whole array of topics. So Jennifer Ashton on weight loss drugs, Mike Tyson, Brett Favre, Hilvin Finch, you name it. There's a lot more. So Mark Erika is tomorrow at 5 o'clock. Newsmax.com. Go there, /listen to hear that. Or YouTube, any place. Your favorite.
Information. Truth. Is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.